Welcome once again, dear students. Myself, Professor P.B. Sargade from Sadhguru Gadge Maharaj College, Karad. And in our Rayat Online School Education Project of 2021-22, in biology, we are studying the 9th topic from our biology syllabus, that is control and coordination. And this is the second lecture of our control and coordination topic. Now let's start. In the previous lecture, we have seen the brief account of the nervous system, and now today we are going to see the human nervous system. As told you earlier, the human nervous system is broadly classified into three parts, that is CNS or central nervous system, PNS or peripheral nervous system, and ANS or autonomous nervous system. Now we will see in detail how the nervous system in human being is classified depending on its origin and functions. Now when we observe carefully the nervous system in human being, as told you earlier in the previous slide, the nervous system, it is broadly classified into three parts: central nervous system or CNS, peripheral nervous system or PNS, and autonomic or autonomous nervous system, ANS. Now, the central nervous system or CNS, it is classified or it is divided into two parts, that is the brain, which is the major part controlling the body of the human being. Then the second part in the central nervous system or CNS is the spinal cord. Now, brain and spinal cord, they together constitute the central nervous system or CNS. Then peripheral nervous system or PNS, it is divided into two parts: the cranial nerves, which are arising from the brain, and second, the spinal nerves, which are arising from the spinal cord. Now it is about the peripheral nervous system. Now the third, autonomous or autonomic nervous system or ANS, it is divided into two parts: sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Now this is the basic of the nervous system classification. Now we will move forward. We will see the various parts of the brain. Now when we study the brain is broadly divided into three parts, that is forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. In forebrain, the parts which are there, it is the first part in the forebrain, which is the major part of the brain, which constitutes the major bulk of the brain. It is cerebrum. It is divided into two cerebral hemispheres, and the second part is diencephalon. And the brain, the midbrain, it is divided into again two parts: the optic lobes and the optic chiasma. They together constitute the midbrain. Then the hindbrain, it is divided into three parts: cerebellum, pons varolii, and medulla oblongata. Now these are the three major parts of the brain: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. And again they are divided into these respective parts. Now we will see in detail what are the parts of the brain and what is their exact function in the next slide. Now the central nervous system or CNS, as told you earlier, now we'll see in detail. The brain and spinal cord are the parts of the CNS or central nervous system which lie along the mid-dorsal axis. The brain, it is enclosed within the brain box or cranium. Now remember, we simply called it in our language as skull or brain box or cranium of the skull, whereas the spinal cord occupies the vertebral canal of the vertebral column. Now all of you know that you have studied in your standard 11th the human skeleton. You have studied the axial and appendicular skeleton. It is the nervous system, it is enclosed in the axial skeleton, that is in the skull, in the cranium, and all of you know that the skull is attached to the vertebral column, and the vertebrae of the vertebral column, they have a neural canal, and through which the spinal cord goes out or it runs. Inner to these bony coverings, there are three protective membranes which are called as meninges. Now when we talk about the meninges, These are in direct contact with the nervous tissue, that means the brain and the spinal cord, and they protect. We will see in detail the functions of the meninges that protect the brain and spinal cord. The meninges and their parts. First is the dura mater. It is the outermost tough, non-vascular, thick and fibrous meninx, and it is attached to the inner side of the cranium. Now remember, it is attached to the inner side of the cranium. It is separated from the underlying arachnoid matter by the subdural space, and it is filled with a serous fluid. Now the first covering, which is outside, it is called as dura mater. Then the second, arachnoid matter. It is the middle, thin and non-vascular layer of connective tissue having web-like appearance, and it is separated from the pia mater below by a narrow subarachnoid space filled with cerebrospinal fluid, or simply the CSF. The arachnoid matter also protects the brain and the spinal cord. The first we have seen the dura mater, the second is arachnoid matter, and the third is pia mater. It is the innermost, delicate, highly vascular membrane which lies in close contact with the CNS or central nervous system. It helps in this process along with the astrocytes. I have told you about the astrocytes in the previous lectures. Now these are the meninges and their functions of the central nervous system. Now moving forward, what is cerebrospinal fluid, or what is CSF? As told you earlier, the CSF is present in the brain and the ventricles of the brain. What is CSF? It is a lymph-like extracellular fluid secreted by choroid plexus of pia mater, present inner to subarachnoid space in the ventricles of the brain within the central canal of spinal cord. The CSF is secreted by the pia mater, the choroid plexuses and the ependymal cells lining the ventricles. Now where from this CSF originates? The CSF, which is secreted by the pia mater, the choroid plexuses and the ependymal cells lining the ventricles of the brain, and central canal of spinal cord. The three openings in the roof of medulla oblongata help in draining out the CSF from brain to the outside. Now the CSF, it is most important liquid which is providing nourishment and protection to the brain and other delicate parts. Now we will see in detail. The meninges and CSF acts as a shock absorber and protect the brain and spinal cord from the mechanical injuries. Now remember, the brain is protected and the spinal cord is protected in a highly protected manner in the cranium and in the vertebral column, but also the meninges and CSF, they protect the brain and spinal cord from the mechanical injuries. It also maintains constant pressure inside the cranium. Remember, the brain is a delicate part. It is not having any hard part in it. So it maintains the constant pressure inside the cranium. It helps in exchange of nutrients and wastes between the blood and the brain tissue. Now this is the most important function. It has asked in so many times. It helps in exchange of nutrients and waste between blood and brain tissue. It helps in the supply of oxygen to the brain. It helps in the supply of oxygen to the brain, and it protects the brain from desiccation. It means it does not allow the brain to dry, and it protects the brain from desiccation. The CSF is slightly alkaline fluid with a specific gravity of 1.005. Now remember these points, because these points are specially generally asked to the MCQs and one sentence answers. CSF is slightly alkaline fluid with a specific gravity of 1.005. A total of 100 to 100 cc of CSF is present in and around the CNS or central nervous system, near about 100 to 120 cc. Now moving towards the next slide. This was about the CSF or cerebrospinal fluid. We will see in detail the human brain. The human brain, as described in these two diagrams, it is divided into parts, and respectively these parts, they are colored in various colors. Now this is the frontal lobe, this is the temporal lobe, it is, and the above region, it is the parietal lobe, this is the occipital lobe, this is the cerebellum, this is the pons, this is the medulla oblongata, and this is the spinal cord. So the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe, pons, medulla oblongata, spinal cord, and cerebellum. These are the parts which we can observe from the above in the brain, human brain. And if we take the longitudinal section of the brain, what parts are seen in the brain? This brain shows, this is the cerebrum, and it is divided, as told you earlier, into the cerebral hemispheres. Beneath it is corpus callosum, then above it is the cerebral cortex, then this is the thalamus, this is the hypothalamus, this is the pituitary gland, then this region is the pons, this is the reticular activating system, then this is the medulla, and this is the cerebellum. Now when you observe the brain carefully, you've seen that the brain is folded. It shows undulations, and these undulations or the folded regions, they are called as sulci and gyri. Now it helps in the brain to cover more surface area. So there is presence of sulci and gyri in the brain, and they are clearly seen in the diagram. Now moving towards the next, human brain, the ventricles of brain. As told you earlier, there are some openings in the brain or the empty spaces in the brain which are filled with the cerebrospinal fluid or CSF, and these ventricles are the empty spaces of brain. There are 4 ventricles: lateral ventricles, third ventricle, and fourth ventricle. Now if you observe the anterior view of the brain and left lateral view of the brain, you are clearly seeing the ventricles of the brain. Now this is the lateral ventricle, this is the anterior horn. Now this projection or the space, it looks like an horn, so it is called as anterior horn. Then it is beneath that, it is the septum pellucidum which divides this part. Then this is the third ventricle beneath the septum pellucidum. Then cerebral aqueduct beneath it. Then this is the fourth ventricle, this is the central canal, this is the interventricular foramen, then inferior horn, this is the anterior horn, and this is the inferior horn, then this is the lateral aperture. And if you observe, this is the anterior view of the brain. In the left lateral view, you are able to see the lateral ventricle, third ventricle, then posterior horn, cerebral aqueduct, then fourth ventricle, median aperture, and central canal. And at the same time, in the anterior view, anterior and inferior horns, they are visible. Now these are the ventricles of the brain, and they contain the cerebrospinal fluid. These are the empty spaces, and they have their specific functions in the central nervous system or in the brain. Now moving towards the next slide, we have seen the various parts of the brain. In forebrain, the forebrain consists of olfactory lobes, cerebrum, and diencephalon. Now what are the olfactory lobes? As explained in the diagram, these are highly reduced in human brain and covered by cerebrum from all sides except the ventral. Then each lobe consists of a olfactory peduncle and olfactory bulb. Now the olfactory lobes, they are reduced when we consider other animals and the human being. They are having the function of sense of smell. Then the next part is cerebrum in the forebrain. It is the largest part of the brain, making up about 85% of total brain. It is divided into right and left cerebral hemisphere by means of a deep median and long fissure. The two hemispheres internally connected to each other by a thick band of nerve fibers called as corpus callosum. Now this thick band of nerve fibers is called as corpus callosum. The outer surface of cerebrum is called as cerebral cortex. Now remember, when we study the cerebrum in detail, the outer surface of cerebrum is called as cerebral cortex, while the deep inner part is called as cerebral medulla. The cerebral cortex has outer thin region composed of gray matter and inner medulla which is composed of white matter. Now you know the gray matter and the white matter. The surface of each cerebral hemisphere is greatly folded by many convolutions, as told you in the earlier diagram, or convolutions, they are called as gyri, and grooves are called as sulci. Now this question is asked so many times in the MCQs because the convolutions or the convex parts, they are called as gyri, and the grooves which are present above the brain, they are called as sulci. So they are collectively called as gyri and sulci. These greatly increase the total surface area for accommodation of the vast number of nerve cells. Now it is very much important because of this arrangement, the surface area of the brain, it is increased and it readily accommodates the vast number of nerve cells. So the number of nerve cells increases. Each cerebral hemisphere is further divided into 4 main lobes by 3 deep sulci or sulci, and these are the center or central sulcus, which demarcates frontal lobe from the parietal lobe. It is called as central sulcus. Then parieto-occipital sulcus, which separates the parietal lobe from occipital lobe. It is called as parieto-occipital sulcus. Then the lateral or Sylvian sulcus, which demarcates the temporal lobe from the frontal and parietal lobes. So it is called as a Sylvian sulcus. Since these 3 sulci are not complete. Now remember, these sulci are not complete. The lobes are not clearly demarcated from each other. These lobes are not clearly demarcated. A 5th median lobe called as insula or insular cortex is folded deep within the lateral sulcus and it is seen in the brain. The gray matter of cerebral cortex, it is mainly consisting of cell bodies of billions of neurons along with non-modulated fibers and dendrons, as explained earlier. The white matter mainly has axons of myelinated nerves. So remember, these are the sulcuses and they are dividing the parts of the brain. Now moving forward, the functional areas of cerebrum. Now which are the functional areas of cerebrum? Frontal lobes, then parietal lobes, temporal lobes and occipital lobes we have seen earlier. Now what is the function of frontal lobes? They have motor area which controls voluntary motor activities or movements of muscles. Now remember, the frontal lobes, they have motor area which controls the voluntary motor activities or movements of the muscles. The premotor area is higher center for involuntary movements and autonomous nervous system. The association area is for coordination between sensation and movements. Then Broca's area, oblique, motor speech area, it is also very much important. It translates the thoughts into speech. Now remember, the human being is able to speak its language. Now there are so many languages in the world, and this Broca's area or motor speech area, it translates the thoughts into speech. The expression of emotions, intelligence and willpower, memory, personality areas are located in the frontal lobe. Now again I am repeating, remember, the frontal lobe or the part of the cerebrum, it is very much important when we consider the human brain, because the expression of emotions, intelligence, willpower, memory, personality areas are located in the frontal lobe. So we can say our mind or the emotion, intelligence, all these functions, they are located in the frontal lobe and particularly in the cerebrum. Now moving forward, this was about the frontal lobes. The parietal lobes, they are mainly for somesthetic sensation of pain, pressure, temperature test. That is the test of, it is called as gustoreceptor. Now the parietal lobes are mainly responsible for the sensation of pain, pressure, temperature at test. Now remember, our body is able to sense the pain. We got pain because of some injury, because of some disease. Then we are able to observe and identify the pressure, the temperature and the taste. Now this sensation or all these functions, they are carried out in the parietal lobes of the frontal lobe of the brain. Then temporal lobes, it contains centers for smell, olfactory. As I explained you earlier, the olfactory lobes, they are associated with the sensation of smell. Then hearing, it is called as auditory region, speech and emotions. Remember, these are the most important functions in case of the human being, and they are located in the temporal lobes, or they are having the centers there. The sensation of smell, that is the olfactory sensation, the auditory sensation or hearing, the speech and emotions, they are in the temporal lobes. Next, the occipital lobes, they have visual areas mainly for sense of vision, then area of contact between temporal, parietal, occipital, and occipital lobes is a center for Wernicke's area or intelligence center. I will again repeat, the occipital lobes, they have visual area mainly for sense of vision, and it is so much important. The area of contact between temporal, parietal and occipital lobes is center for Wernicke's area or intelligence center. It is called as intelligence center or Wernicke's area. It helps in the understanding of spoken and written words. Now the human being in the past few years or a few million years, when we consider about the human being is the younger-most animal in the kingdom Animalia, and the brain is helping or aiding the human being to develop its own culture and a specific identity. So these occipital lobes play an important role. It helps in understanding the intelligence center or Wernicke's area of spoken and written words. The cerebrum thus shows all three types of areas. That means sensory area, that is sensory, then motor and association area. All these three types, they are seen in the cerebrum. Then basal nuclei or basal ganglia are gray masses which are present within the white matter or lying on the lateral sides of thalamus. I will repeat again. The basal nuclei or basal ganglia are gray masses present within the white matter or lying on the lateral sides of the thalamus. Then the basal ganglia or nuclei of cerebrum, they receive neurotransmitters from various parts. Then they help the cortex in the execution of activities at the subconscious level. Example, writing slow or rapid typing. Then the corpus striatum is present at the floor of cerebrum, is the largest basal nucleus. Now this was about the brain. Now moving forward, the diencephalon, which is the third part, it is the part of the forebrain that contains epithalamus, thalamus and hypothalamus. Now when we consider the pituitary gland, it is originating from this region. I will explain you later. The epithalamus, then thalamus and hypothalamus. It lies below the corpus callosum and above the midbrain. It encloses a single cavity termed as third ventricle or diocele. The cavity, it is called as third ventricle or diocele. which communicates with the two lateral ventricles of cerebrum through a narrow opening called as foramen of Monro. Now remember, it is called as, that cavity is called as, the opening is called as foramen of Monro. Then the epithalamus is the thin non-nervous roof of the diencephalon. Remember, when the question is asked in the examination, you should told that the epithalamus is the non-nervous roof of the diencephalon. Then the different parts of the brain are interconnected by RAS. It is reticular activating system. I will told you again, the RAS or RAS is the reticular activating system through the thalami. It is called relay centers as it transmits all sensory impulses except those of olfactory, that is the smell, to the cerebrum, that is the gatekeeper of cerebrum, connecting the anterior lateral ventricle to the iter posteriorly. Now these are the three parts of the diencephalon: epithalamus, thalamus and hypothalamus. Moving forward, now this is the, again we are seeing the diagram of the brain which we have seen previously. The corpus callosum, this is the cerebrum, cerebral cortex, thalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary gland. Now hypothalamus, it is giving rise to the pituitary gland. Then this is the pons, reticular activating system, medulla, cerebellum. Now talking about the narrow cavity of diencephalon is called as third ventricle or diocele, as told you earlier. It connects anteriorly to the two lateral ventricles by a single opening called as foramen of Monro, explained you earlier, and posteriorly to the fourth ventricle or metacele. Remember, the fourth ventricle, it is also called as metacele, through a narrow duct of Sylvius or iter. Then hypothalamus. We will talk about the hypothalamus in detail. It forms a floor of the diencephalon. The hypothalamus region, it is very small, but it forms a floor of the diencephalon. It is richly supplied with blood vessels and it is called as hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal vein. It is so having the rich blood supply. It helps in feedback mechanism for hormonal control. Now we are in this topic, we are also seeing the hormones and the hormonal control. It maintains the homeostasis. All of you know the meaning of the homeostasis: internal equilibrium of the body and involuntary behavior control. Like the cerebrum, the hypothalamus also contains hypothalamic nuclei in its white pituitary gland with neurosecretory cells involved in the production of hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin. Remember, the neurosecretory cells, they are involved in the production of hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin. Now remember, in our next part, the hormonal coordination, we are going to see the various hormones, their actions, how the hormones affect the growth and total maintenance of the body. We will see in detail. But this was about the hypothalamus. Now moving forward, the hypothalamus is a link. It is the connecting link between the nervous and the endocrine system. Now so many times the question is asked. So you should remember, the hypothalamus is a link between the nervous and the endocrine system. It is higher centers for endocrine system. If the question is asked, you should write that the hypothalamus, it is having higher centers for endocrine system when compared to the nervous centers. It regulates the heart rate, then respiration, blood pressure. The blood pressure is, in short form, it is called as BP, then body temperature, water and electrolyte balance. It has centers for hunger, thirst, sleep, fatigue, satiety center, then secretion of glands of stomach and intestine. Now so many functions they are there. So I will tell you again, it regulates the heartbeat or the heart rate, then respiration, blood pressure or BP, body temperature, water and electrolyte balance. It has centers for hunger and thirst, then sleep, fatigue, satiety center, then secretion of glands of stomach and intestine. So many functions are controlled by these. It also produces neurohormones which stimulates the pituitary gland. Now it is also important because the pituitary gland is also needs the activation. So it also produces neurohormones that stimulate the pituitary gland or pituitary gland. A complex neuronal circuit called as the limbic system is formed by the hypothalamus, amygdala, parts of epithalamus and thalamus, the hippocampus and other areas. It appears to be responsible for emotional reactions, then motivational drives and memory. The floor of hypothalamus continues as a downward projection called as hypophyseal stalk or infundibulum, which connects it to the hypophysis, that is the pituitary gland, both physically and functionally by secretion of neurotransmitter. We will give it in the details in the chemical coordination. I will tell you again, the floor of the hypothalamus continues as a downward projection called as hypophyseal stalk. This downward projection is called as hypophyseal stalk, or it is simply called as infundibulum, which connects it to the hypophysis, that is the pituitary gland, both physically and functionally by secretion of neurotransmitters. We will see in detail in the chemical coordination. The inferior surface of hypothalamus also bears the optic chiasma. It is the crossing of two optic nerves as shown in the earlier diagram, and a pair of mammillary bodies unique to mammalian brain and responsible for recollective memory. Now remember, all these are the parts of the brain, and I have told you in detail the various functions of the various parts. And the brain collectively is the center, control and coordination center of the body, of the human body. And along with the brain, the spinal cord, it regulates and it forms the part of the central nervous system. And in this today's topic, we have studied in detail. So students, please read this part from the book, revise the diagram and study in detail. Now thank you about the second lecture. Here the second lecture ends, and in again next lecture, third lecture, we will see the other part of the control and coordination. Thank you all of you.